What's up, VC? Welcome back to Dad's on a Budget Vinyl. My name is Mark. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. Look, we have a feels like temperature of 109 degrees in North Alabama today, so it's going to be a good day to hang out, listen to records, talk about music, stay inside where the AC is, right? Today I want to talk about the Jayhawks, and I've mentioned the Jayhawks a couple of times in my videos. I talked about them once on my the Americana vinyl tag. I talked about them once on the 10 records that I pull most often. But man, I just don't see a lot of Jayhawks material within the vinyl community. And I think that's a real shame. One of the hype stickers on one of their records says, it's a Rolling Stone quote, and it talks about how the Jayhawks are America's most underappreciated band. And I have to agree with that. Note the word underappreciated, not underrated. When it comes to other musicians, when it comes to the music journalists at large, they love the Jayhawks. So why aren't they a bigger name? I don't know. There's a couple of different theories, but today I want to share the love. I want to talk about their catalog. Um, I found count them, two Jayhawks videos. Chris over at the Long Cut did an excellent job of going through their catalog chronologically and talking about what the band and their music has meant to him in his life, and I love that. And then there's a kid, Aaron Ross, that did a Jayhawks ranking. You gotta love him. He looks like he's about 8 or 9 years old. Of course, that was about 4 years ago. Um, and it was cute, but I want to do something that's a little bit deeper dive. Um, the Jayhawks are one of my favorite bands, and yes, I do feel like, along with Los Lobos, they are one of the most underappreciated bands in North America. So let's dive in. The Jayhawks have 11 studio records. I'm going to be talking about 9 of those because I don't have the Bunkhouse record and I don't have Blue Earth. I could have swore I had it on CD somewhere, but I can't find it. So alas, we're going to talk about everything from Town Hall forward. Um, I came to the Jayhawks playpen, as it were, late in the game, like I have with so many other things. And I've talked about this record before, probably 3 or 4 different times on my channel, because this record turned me on to so much music that I may not have been turned on to otherwise. This is Sweet Relief, a benefit for Victoria Williams, came out in 93. And of course, the big name on the record is Pearl Jam. In 1993, I, along with the rest of the world, was a huge Pearl Jam fan. Um, Grunge was the flavor of the day, and I was all up into Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and Mudhoney and anything Seattle and that whole scene. And I certainly was a huge Pearl Jam fan and still am after all of these years. But I bought this record because of the Crazy Mary track, which was all over the radio, but quite unlike anything else that Pearl Jam had done up to that time, other than, except maybe Yellow Ledbetter. So that's why I bought this. Boy, this record has been responsible for creating so many rabbit trails, rabbit holes. I became a huge fan of Lucinda Williams because of this record. I probably have 7 or 8 of her recordings now. Thank you very much. I became a huge fan of Buffalo Tom, Michael Penn, Shudder to Think, Matthew Sweet, Evan Dando. I really hadn't paid a whole lot of attention to the Lemonheads before this record. Frying Pan is an excellent song. Giant Sand. Thanks to this record, I became a huge Giant Sand fan. Now, including Arizona Imp and Alternator, Band of Blackie Ranchit, Giant Sand, Hal Gelb solo records. That's probably 50 records that I wouldn't have had Probably not if I hadn't picked up this record, but it is, it's the Jayhawks track on here, Lights. And of course, all of these were written by Lucinda Williams, but their delivery of that song made me a fan. I love that track. And became a huge Jayhawks fan. So I want to take the 9 records that I have and I want to rank those in order from least to most, last to first, and see if you guys are on the same page with me. If not, mention it in the comments. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What does your list look like? What do you love about the Jayhawks? I've never seen them live. I would love to. Their last record came out in 2020. It's 2024. I would imagine that we'll see something from them within the next year or so. I certainly hope so. But anyway, with no further ado, now I'm going to step on a few toes with this first pick, okay? In last place, I've got Backroads and Abandoned Motels. What? It's a great record. Yes, it is a great record. I love all of the Jayhawks records, okay? They don't have a dud in the bunch. They're all really, really good music. If nothing else, the Jayhawks are a wonderful band. Um, Tastemaker, producer, musician extraordinaire Joe Henry has used them twice as his backing band on a couple of his releases. Ray Davies of the Kinks has used them twice. Once on his Americana Act 1 and again on Americana Act 2. The Jayhawks are a wonderful band, okay? This record came out, I believe, in 2017. What don't I like about it? The songs are great. The music is great. My problem with this record is the same problem that I have with really these bottom 3 records. It doesn't really seem like a Jayhawks record for me. The idea behind this record was that Gary Louris, one of the founding members, along with Mark Olson and Mark Perlman on bass, the idea behind this record was to go back and to revisit some songwriting that Gary Louris had done with other folks. And so it features songwriting by collaborations between Gary Louris and the Dixie Chicks, Jacob Dylan, Ari Hest, Kerry Rodriguez, and I love all of those artists. It really could have been a Gary Louris solo album with guests, okay? Much in the same way that Rufus Wainwright did his Folkocracy record last year. The songwriting is great, and the music is great. It just doesn't really feel like a Jayhawks record to me. So that's why it's coming in at last place. It's a wonderful record. I love the cover. I believe that's a Wim Wenders photograph. But anyway, last place, number 9, Backroads and Abandoned Motels. Coming in at number 8, Paging Mr. Proust, okay? Again, another great record. I would give this and Abandoned Motels probably 3.5 stars out of 5. It's a very good, very solid record. This is too, recorded in Oregon, produced by Peter Buck, Tucker Martine, and Gary Louris. And it starts off with Quiet Corners and Empty Spaces, which is classic Jayhawks. But then it kind of goes back and forth. It's a little bit uneven as far as the mood that the record puts you in. It goes from really light to kind of dark to heavy to poppy to, you know, all of the above. I don't know. I think it could benefit from a different track listing. I do like Quiet Corners and Empty Spaces. I like Lovers of the Sun, Pretty Roses in Your Hair, track 4. Kind of dark and broody, but man, some killer Gary Louris guitar work. And by the way, I want to throw out there right now that I think that Gary Lewis is one of the most underrated guitar players out there. The guy is simply fantastic. There are other. I love Comeback Kids. I like The Devil's in Her Eyes. This is a great record. It's just a little bit uneven to me. And again, there are times that it sounds like a Jayhawks record, and there are times that it is not. I love the photo of this retro airport. So coming in at number 8, that would be Paging Mr. Proust. Coming in at number 7, that would be the Jayhawks XOXO. This was actually the last Jayhawks release. That painting is by Duncan Hanna that's called British Invasion, and it is an homage to some of that music. But this album, again, it's a great record, but it's all over the place. This is indeed the direction that the Jayhawks will probably go in from here on out. It's a much more democratic affair. The songwriting is starting to get spread out a little bit more. The album opens with a Karen Grotberg vocal, which is a first. First time that she handles lead vocals, and it's the first time that anybody other than Gary Lewis or Mark Olson would have a lead-off vocal on one of their albums. Forgotten Town, Dogtown Days, which is actually a Tim O'Regan song, was the single and video that was released from the record. Ruby, the fourth tune, written by Karen Grotberg. You've got two Tim O'Regan tracks, 2 Mark Perlman tracks, a Karen Grotberg track, and then a couple other things that are written. I think there's only 2 Gary Lewis originals, and then there's some co-songwriting credits with him. Again, it's a great record. It just doesn't really feel like a Jayhawks record. Look, when the Jayhawks started out, it was Mark Olson's band. Mark Perlman came on pretty early on. It wasn't until about the end of '85 that Gary Lewis was brought aboard. Not long after that, Gary and Mark realized that not only did they have the vocal harmony thing down, that they also made a pretty good songwriting team. And as you can see as I go through these records, that period is probably my favorite Jayhawks period. But when Mark Olson left the band in 1995, the burden was firmly placed on Gary Lewis's shoulders to continue. And they talked about renaming the band. They talked about going in a different direction. They talked about all of these different types of things. Gary Lewis carried on in mighty form. The record that came out after Mark Olson left the band is a wonderful record. It's a good, solid record. To me, ever since that point, Gary Lewis has been the voice of the Jayhawks for me. His voice, his guitar, that's what I want to hear primarily. I love the band's playing. I love the backup vocals. I love the harmonies. We still get great harmonies, even though Mark Olson's not in the band. But these bottom 3 records really, to me, need more Gary Lewis. I'm sorry. That's all there is to it. So XOXO, I thought at first that stood for 2020 because it came out in 2020. It doesn't. It's just a name that they tossed around that stuck. The track starts off, the album has got some wonderful tracks that certainly, if you were doing a Jayhawks best of, a couple of them would go on. But other than that, it's a little uneven for me and needs more Gary Lewis. I'm sorry. That's just how I feel. All right, so 9, 8, 7. Let's talk about number 6. This is Smile. A lot of people kind of diss this album cover. I love it. I think the Jayhawks have a pretty solid album cover game. I love that. And I love that. I'm not exactly sure what they were thinking of or thinking about, but I love that. There's a couple of excellent tracks on here, and I'm Gonna Make You Love Me was used in a Ralph Lauren spot. What Led Me to This Town, somewhere in Ohio. Queen of the World, Pretty Thing. But this is the least, this has got a ton of Gary Lewis on it, but it's the least Jayhawks sounding record, I think, really of the bunch. Um, all of Gary's influences, he was, they tried to make him a poster boy for the Americana movement, I guess, as it were. Gary Lewis's background, and of course, he didn't start playing electric guitar till he was about 25 years old. But his influences were everything from, British Invasion, classic rock, post-punk, krautrock, punk, the whole nine yards. And so this allowed him to really kind of let his hair down, to let his musical taste run completely rampant, even more so than he did on the previous record. And the previous record was Sound of Lies. I love this record cover as well. Sound of Lies is the first record that came out without Mark Olson's vocals. And Gary Lewis really let his influences. So there's tape loops, and there's drum loops, and there's some electronica elements, and there's a little bit of garage rock. You can hear a little bit of Big Star. You can hear a little bit of the Replacements. You can hear all of those other influences that he had picked up along the way that didn't fall squarely into the Americana category. I love the way that it kicks off with The Man Who Loved Life. I really like Big Star. I really like Dying on the Vine, Bottomless Cup, Sound of Lies. And then, of course, this is the reissue, so it's got some bonus tracks. Kirby's tune, It's Up to You, and the rough mix of Sound of Lies. I thought this was a great record. It didn't sound like the Jayhawks, though, but it was a great record. And I think that the moniker that Rolling Stone came out with that year concerning the Jayhawks was, what if your band put out a classic record and no one heard it? And gosh, I think that could be applied to several of these records. This is a good, solid record, absolutely, and I love the cover. I would give this a good, solid 3.5 stars as well. Maybe 4. It's getting up there. It's not that it's a bad record at all. It's just that they've got several other records that came out before that I like a little bit better. All right, now we're getting into what I feel like is the essential Jayhawks, okay? This is Rainy Day Music. This record came out immediately after Smile. So you had the breakaway sounds of Sound of Lies, and then even deeper dive in Smile. This is really kind of a return to form for the Jayhawks. A little bit more Americana. You've got the pedal steel, you've got the mandolin, you've got those songwriting that leans a little bit more towards those first couple of records worth of songwriting. Stumbling Through the Dark is great. Tailspin is fantastic. It's an Americana classic. Save It for a Rainy Day is an Americana classic. I love Come to the River. I love Angeline. The vocals on that are fantastic. Tampa to Tulsa is fantastic. Stumbling Through the Dark. Reprise is fantastic. And so this is a really great record produced by Rick Rubin. And I was a big Jayhawks fan by the time that this record came out. And I really thought that this was going to blow them up. Much in the way that the Avett Brothers became Americana darlings. A band starts out, you discover them, not that many people know them. You kind of feel like they're your band. And you can't wait to turn as many people as possible onto your band. And then you turn around and everybody knows about them. Every other college frat boy's got one of their t-shirts, and They're on, you know, the cover of, you know, Mojo and Uncut and Paste Magazine and Rolling Stone and Spin and American Songwriter, and there they are in a Gap ad, and there they are, and all of a sudden they're not really your band anymore. It's kind of the same thing with Rainy Day Music. I kind of felt at that point like the Jayhawks were my band. And even though I wanted them to get more exposure, I kind of was like, oh no, you know, they're going to become the critical darlings for the Americana movement, and they're going to be everybody's band, and their music's going to get watered down, and everything is going to change. Well, that didn't really happen. But this is a wonderful record, and I would say that we're into 4-star territory with Rainy Day Music. Okay. Next up, and this is coming in at number 3. This is Tomorrow the Green Grass. This is a fantastic record. This is the last record with Mark Olson in the lineup. This features Mark, Gary, Mark Perlman on bass, and by this point they've added Karen Grotberg as a permanent member of the band on vocals and keyboards. This is a fantastic record. There's only a couple of things that keep it from being a perfect record for me, okay? I listened to it again last night, and I love it. Side A is basically a perfect side until you get to Bad Time. I don't get it. I love Grand Funk Railroad. I love Grand Funk. I've got several of their older records, man. For a 3-piece, they could absolutely rock, and I love some of Mark Farner's songwriting. Bad Time was not one of those, okay? And so it's not even a favorite Grand Funk track of mine. I can see it happening. I can see, you know, maybe they're rehearsing or, you know, hanging out in the studio or whatever, and all of a sudden Gary starts, you know, throwing down that vocal. The rest of the band joins in. It's a blast. They're like, wow, that was fun. Let's put it on the next record. I think the record would be stronger without it. Side 2 starts off beautifully with See 'Em on the Street, Nothing Left to Borrow, and Jane. Those are all fantastic songs. All tracks, with the exception of Bad Time, are written by Gary Lewis and Mark Olson, with the exception of Red Song, which was written with Mark Perlman as well. That also is kind of a weak track for me. If it weren't for Red Song and Bad Time, this would be a perfect record. It ends with the excellent 10 Little Kids. You got a couple of mentionable guest spots on here. Ben Montench from Tom Petty's band is on organ. Greg Lees, who plays pedal steel guitar for everybody, is on this. Victoria Williams, we talked about her to begin the video. We'll talk about her a little bit more here in a moment. But it's a fantastic album. The songwriting is fantastic. I can't imagine Mark Olson leaving the band. Several things happened around the time that this record came out. Number one, Mark Olson was growing increasingly disillusioned and disappointed with the Music Machine. They are on the American Records label, started out as Def Jam, became Def American, eventually became American LLC. But they are very much part of the record-making machine. Long tour, exhaustive tour. He feels like his creativity has been stifled a little bit as well. On top of that, I'm not sure when they met, but by this point, Mark Olson and Victoria Williams had gotten married. Obviously, Victoria Williams had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. That was the whole reason for the Sweet Relief record to begin with, because so many musicians don't have medical insurance. And so to be diagnosed with a a disease like that and to not have medical insurance to help you combat it. All of her musical friends got together to create that album to create some relief, some financial relief for her, to help her pay for her medical bills. But Mark wanted to spend more time with his wife, certainly with what she was going on at the time. And they also wanted to move to the desert, have a much simpler life, and create a bunch of great music together. And that's exactly what happened. So at the end of the tour for this record, as a matter of fact, Halloween Day 1995, Mark decides he's gone and basically leaves the band as a three-piece. So, but this is a fantastic record. Tomorrow the Green Grass. It's also said, at about this time, Levi's came along and they really wanted the song Blue for a Blue Jean ad, and they offered them a relatively large sum of money to use that record. There were members of the band that thought, "Man, this is great. We need that. We can all buy houses with that type of money." But at the time in 1993, 94, 95, this is when Pearl Jam's going up. They're battling Ticketmaster over ticket prices. You've got Kurt Cobain on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine wearing his, corporate music sucks t-shirt. It just was not popular to sell out. And that's the way that it was considered back then, selling out. Of course, by 2002, there you have the Avett Brothers in a Gap ad. That could have been the Jayhawks as early as 1995, but they decided to do that. Not to do that. That also created some friction in the band. And so at the end of the tour for this record, Mark Olson's gone, and we move into those other records that we talk about. Number 2 for me, and this is going to surprise some people, even though Mark left the band in 95, several times since then, Mark and Gary have gotten back together to go on tour together as a two-piece, as a duo. They also put out a couple of records together, both studio and live. They weren't Jayhawks records. They were Mark Olson and Gary Louris records. So they were able to maintain a friendship and keep things amicable. And finally, the inevitable happened, and it was announced in 2010 that the Jayhawks were going to come out with a new record, including Mark Olson, who had rejoined the band. I was stoked. By that time, I was a full-blown Jayhawks fan. That earlier portion of their catalog with those wonderfully delicious harmonies, the leanings towards more of the Americana. The Jayhawks' first couple of records, particularly the Bunkhouse record, their debut record on the Bunkhouse label, basically Mark Olson was trying to be a revamped version of, the Flying Burrito Brothers. They were also at that time described in No Depression magazine as being like Hank Williams on speed. But they definitely lean more towards an alt country / Americana vibe with those first few records. And so that's my favorite portion of their catalog. And when I heard that they were coming out with a new record, I was stoked. And in my mind, in my opinion, they absolutely delivered. This is Mockingbird Time. This came out in 2011. Let me see if I can get this open. It's a wonderful record. When I first bought it, it wasn't released on vinyl, it was released on CD. The CD came with a DVD that included the making of, and I thought it was fantastic. The music on this record, of course, music takes us back to a time and place, what was going on in our lives when we discovered it, when we first started listening to it. When this came out in 2011, I was freshly married, madly in love, and this is a beautiful, very romantic record, but it's very Jayhawkian. It starts off with Hide Your Colors, which is a fantastic little pop song. Closer to Your Side is so good. Tiny Arrows, which closes out side one, is absolutely beautiful and one of my favorite Jayhawk tracks. Side two opens and She Walks in so many ways. As far as the Jayhawk sound, that's probably top three songs. High Water Blues, Mockingbird Time, Cinnamon Love is another one of their just great songs with just a fantastic, Mark Olson was talking about Gary Louris, his guitar playing, and about how he just always comes up with the perfect part for a song. And Cinnamon Love is one of those types of songs. Gilder Annie, Black Eyed Susan, Pouring Rain at Dawn, and Hey Mr. Man, produced by Gary Louris. This is a fantastic record. Comes in at number 2 for me. I mentioned this record in the 10 records that I pull most. I pull this record quite a bit. It never fails to deliver. I'm always blown away at how fresh and wonderful it sounds. So if you haven't heard this, you need to check it out. For whatever reason, it didn't last. Mark Olson, after this record and a quick little tour to promote it, was gone again, and there we go. But anyway, for the time and place, number 2, Jayhawks, Mockingbird Time. And of course, if you know their catalog, you know what's going to come in at number 1. That's going to be Hollywood Time. This is the record. And if you're a Jayhawks fan, you know how George Drakoulias was on the phone with a Twin Tones executive. Twin Tones was the label that Blue Earth, local Minneapolis, where the band is from, label. He was put on hold. The music that was playing was Jayhawks music. He absolutely fell in love with them. Said, hey, who is that? Who's producing them? Who's doing what? Okay, well, I want them. And was very influential in getting them signed to, at the time, what was Def American, okay? Def Jam. Rick Rubin had already, he was still flying high with what he had done for the Chili Peppers with Blood Sugar Sex Magic. He had blown up, reignited Aerosmith and Run DMC's careers with that Walk This Way mashup. So Rick Rubin was like the name in record production at the time, and was known for those type of acts. And then they signed the Jayhawks, and it's kind of like, what? But this is their major label debut. It is a fantastic record. From the first piano chord that you hear as the needle drops on Waiting for the Sun, Crowded in the Wings, Clouds, Two Angels, Take Me With You When You Go, Sister Cities, Settle Down Like Rain, Wichita, Nevada, California, and Martin Song. This is a fantastic record. I'm giving it 4.5 stars. It's almost a 5. And again, you've got some honorable mentions. Benmont Tench is on this record as well. And of course, at this time, it was Mark, Gary, Mark Perlman, and Ken Callahan on drums. Additional players at the time were Benmont Tench, Nicky Hopkins, and Charlie Drayton. So this is a fantastic record. When this dropped, I'm sure that everybody thought, okay, this is it. And for a while it was. I remember thinking that the Jayhawks were going to be the next big thing. At the time, they were being talked about more than Uncle Tupelo. They were being talked about more than Whiskey Town. The music was fantastic, and the world was slowly recognizing it. But it just didn't happen. And here we are, what is that? 32 years later. And the Jayhawks are still underrated. So I'm going to tell you, vinyl community, if you don't know the Jayhawks, if you're a fan of wonderful songwriting, wonderful singing, jangly guitars, but not just that, killer electric guitar from time to time as well, wonderful production, wonderful songwriting, man, give the Jayhawks a shot because they are fantastic. If you're a fan of Neil Young, if you're a fan of Crosby, Stills and Nash, if you're a fan of any of those aforementioned bands, Uncle Tupelo or Whiskey Town, pick up some Jayhawks records. If you're a newbie to this scene, the Jayhawks have a decent reissue program. You can pick up most of these records new um, without spending a ton of money, and they're absolutely worth investing in. Mm, that's good coffee. Real quick before we move on, I want to talk about a few honorable mentions. Let's talk about Victoria Williams for a moment. Sweet Relief and all of those wonderful bands being able to or being willing to come and contribute to that project. And then on top of that, the songs that are on that record are absolutely fantastic. And so I had to take a deep dive into Victoria Williams. At this point, I've got 6 or 7 of her records, but these are 3 that you absolutely need to pick up. This is Loose. This came out in 1995. Victoria Williams has also appeared. She's on a couple of the Jayhawks records. She's on a Hal Gill record or 2. Um, she's almost got like a helium voice, is how I would describe it. But it's very endearing, very charming, very cute and sweet. And her songwriting is fantastic. I love her lyrics. This came out, I believe, in 2000. This is The Musings of a Creek Dipper. Okay. And all of her records are just chock full of great photos and liner notes. She always includes the lyrics, which I think is a wonderful thing. And then this is This Moment, which is one of her songs. That's the song that Matthew Sweet covers on the Sweet Relief record. And this is This Moment in Toronto with Victoria Williams and the Loose Band. Of course, the Loose Band would include Joey Burns and John Covertino from Calexico and Giant Sand. This is a fantastic record as well. Recorded live, as it says, in Toronto, I guess in about 2002. This is a fantastic record. Let's talk about Mark Olson. What did he do when he left the Jayhawks? Well, he moved to the Mojave Desert and started living a low-key life with his new wife, Victoria Williams, and they came out with quite a bit of music. This is Mark Olson, the original Harmony Ridge Creek Dippers with my own Joe Ellen. This is a fantastic, basically stripped down, him with an acoustic guitar. Every once in a while there's a fiddle or a dobro or a tambourine or something else. Vic Williams does some backing vocals on some of it, but this is a great little lo-fi, low-key record. And then this is Mark Olson and the Creek Dippers, December's Child. Same type of affair, a little bit more production. But these are wonderful little records. If you like what you liked about Mark Olson on those first few Jayhawks records, those are definitely worth picking up. And then last but not least, I talked about I came to the Jayhawks backwards. I sought out something that Pearl Jam was on. They happened to be on it too. I went backwards from there. Well, because I became a big Jayhawks fan, when this came out and I heard that the Jayhawks were the backing band, I had to have it. This is Ray Davies' Americana Act 1. This is a fantastic record. The Jayhawks are a wonderful backing band. They're not pretentious at all. They always play exactly what's needed for the song, nothing more, nothing less. Their harmonies are impeccable. Mark Perlman is an underrated bass player, and Karen Grotberg is a fantastic piano player. I bought this record because of the Jayhawks, but this record turned me on to the brilliance of Ray Davies' songwriting. And yes, I know that the Kinks have a bunch of great songs, radio songs, but I never was a huge Kinks fan. um, because for me, if I had any extra money, it was the Beatles or the Stones or Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or the Who, or it was always somebody else. It was never the Kinks. Purchasing this record has been an eye opener for me of both Ray and Dave Davies' songwriting style and brilliance. And now I'm a huge Kinks fan. I'm slowly scarfing up their records. So far, I've purchased a couple. They've got 24. I've got 3. So it'll probably be what, another 6 months to a year before I do a Kinks video. But there will be one of those coming as well. So anyway, the Jayhawks, man, America's most underrated band. I absolutely love them. They can rock, they can be pretty, they can be bright and sunny, they can be dark and somewhat menacing. The Jayhawks, if you don't know the Jayhawks, do yourself a favor and turn yourself on to some great music. I appreciate you hanging with me today. Listen, if you like this content, you know the drill. Like and subscribe. Leave a message in the comments. Tell me what you think about my list. Tell me how it's completely wrong and what I should have done differently. I love all of that stuff. In the meantime, you guys have an awesome day. Cheers to you, mate. We'll talk to you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.